You already know which habit is costing you. You have known for a while, and deep down you know it is not just a habit. It is costing you more than you admit. Your time, your energy, and the version of yourself you keep almost becoming. Today that changes. In this video you are going to discover 6 ways to break bad habits using Japanese philosophy. And by the end of it, you will have 6 real tools drawn from centuries of Japanese wisdom that will change the way you think about habits, identity, and who you are becoming. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Kaizen, the art of small, daily change. Most people try to break a habit the same way they try to break a wall. All at once, with force, with a kind of furious energy that burns out after 3 days and leaves you feeling worse than before you started. And then you do what humans always do. You tell yourself you do not have enough willpower. You tell yourself you are the problem. You carry that story around for years. But the Japanese concept of Kaizen says something entirely different. It says the wall does not need to be broken. It needs to be worn away, 1 grain at a time, every single day. The word Kaizen comes from 2 Japanese roots. Kai, meaning change, and Zen, meaning good. Change for the better, not change that shocks the system, not change that announces itself loudly and demands applause. Quiet change, steady change. Change so small it almost feels like nothing is happening. And that is exactly the point. Kaizen as a formal practice was developed and applied in post-war Japanese manufacturing, most famously within Toyota. But its roots reach much deeper into Japanese thought, into a cultural relationship with patience and process that predates any factory floor. The idea is simple, and it is devastating in the best possible way. If you improve by just 1% each day, you are not the same person at the end of the year. You are 37 times better. Think about the habit you are trying to break. Now forget the dramatic version of breaking it. Forget the cold turkey. Forget the dramatic declaration. Instead, ask yourself this: what is the smallest possible reduction you can make today? Not this week, not this month, today. That one small movement is Kaizen, and it is where everything begins. Chapter 2. Zanshin, lingering awareness. There is a moment that happens right before a bad habit takes hold. A quiet moment, a tiny gap between the trigger and the action. Most people never see it because they are not looking for it. They are already inside the habit before they realize it has started. And then it is over, and the guilt arrives, and they wonder how it happened again. Zanshin is the practice of remaining aware after the action. But more than that, it is a state of sustained, open attention that a warrior carries at all times. A samurai who sheathes his sword does not close his mind. He remains alert. He sees what is coming before it arrives. The word Zanshin translates loosely as remaining mind or lingering awareness. It comes from Japanese martial arts, particularly kendo and kyudo, the art of archery. But the principle extends far beyond combat. It is the opposite of autopilot. It is the choice to stay present, even when nothing seems to be happening, especially when nothing seems to be happening, because that is when habits move. In the quiet, in the idle moment, in the gap between tasks when your mind reaches for the familiar without asking permission. Zanshin asks you to know your triggers before they arrive. What time of day does the habit call loudest? What emotion opens the door? What environment puts you back on that old familiar path? These are not mysteries, they are patterns, and patterns can be watched. When you carry Zanshin into your daily life, you begin to see the habit approaching from a distance. You see it the way a hawk sees movement in the grass below, calmly, clearly, without panic. And that moment of seeing, that gap of awareness, is enough. You do not need to be stronger than the habit. You only need to see it before it arrives. That is Zanshin. And once you have it, you cannot unsee the pattern. Chapter 3. Fudoshin, the immovable mind. Here is what no one tells you about breaking a bad habit. The hardest part is not the habit itself. The hardest part is the emotional storm that arrives when you try to stop. The craving hits, and suddenly, you are not dealing with the behavior anymore. You are dealing with discomfort, with restlessness, with a kind of inner pressure that feels enormous and urgent and unbearable, and that feeling lies. It tells you the only way to make it stop is to give in. Fudoshin is the answer to that lie. It is a concept rooted in Japanese martial philosophy and Zen Buddhism. Fudoshin, the immovable mind, refers to a state of emotional and psychological stability that cannot be rattled by circumstance. It is not numbness. It is not suppression. It is something far more sophisticated. It is the ability to feel the wave without being swept away by it. The immovable mind does not mean a mind that feels nothing. It means a mind that is not controlled by what it feels. There is a profound difference. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary swordsman and author of the Book of Five Rings, wrote extensively about the cultivation of a calm and unshakable inner state. His entire philosophy of combat was built not on aggression but on stillness. The practitioner who has trained the mind so thoroughly that even in the middle of chaos there is a quiet center. The sword comes from that center, so does every meaningful action. When the craving comes, do not fight it and do not obey it. Observe it, breathe through it, let it exist without feeding it. Urge surfing, as modern psychology has come to call it, is built on this same principle. The craving will peak, and it will pass. Always. Your emotional reaction to the discomfort is not a sign of weakness. It is simply weather, and the weather always changes. Fudoshin teaches you to be the mountain, while the storm does whatever storms do. Chapter 4. Shuhari. Follow the rule. Break the rule. Transcend the rule. When you are trying to break a bad habit, one of the most dangerous things you can do is skip steps. You reach for some elegant, intuitive version of a new way of living before you have actually learned to walk inside it. You try to improvise before you know the fundamentals, and when it falls apart, you tell yourself the method did not work. But the method was never the problem. The sequence was. Shuhari is a framework from Japanese martial arts and performing arts that describes the 3 stages of genuine mastery. It is most closely associated with the traditions of Budo, the martial way. Shu means to obey. This is the first stage. You follow the structure exactly. You do not personalize it. You do not question it. You trust that the discipline itself carries wisdom, and you move inside its shape without resistance. If you are trying to break a habit, this is the phase where you build replacement behaviors. You are strict. You are consistent. You honor the form. Ha means to detach. In this second stage, you begin to understand why the rules work. You see the principles underneath the structure, and from that place of understanding, you can begin to adapt. You start to recognize what works for your specific mind, your specific triggers, your specific life. You are no longer just following, you are thinking. Re means to transcend. The rules have become so deeply absorbed that they no longer feel like rules. The new behavior is simply who you are. The old habit does not call because you have become someone it does not recognize. You cannot arrive at Rai without passing through Shu. You cannot personalize what you have not first understood. Most people try to start at stage 3. They want mastery without apprenticeship. They want freedom without first learning what they are being freed from. Shuhari asks you to be humble enough to begin at the beginning. And then it promises you that if you honor the stages, the end point is not just a broken habit, it is a different person. Chapter 5. Hansei. Reflection and course correction. Somewhere in the middle of breaking a habit, you will slip. That is not a prediction designed to lower your expectations. It is a near certainty of being human. The question is not whether the slip happens. The question is what you do in the minutes immediately after. Most people do one of 2 things. They spiral into shame and use the slip as evidence that they were never going to succeed, or they brush it past and pretend it did not happen, learning nothing. Both responses ensure the pattern continues. one from discouragement, the other from blindness. Hansei is the Japanese practice of deep, honest self-reflection. It is not self-criticism. That is an important distinction. Hansei asks you to look clearly at what happened, to sit with it without defense, to understand it from the inside, and then to draw something useful from it before you move forward. The practice is taken seriously in Japanese culture as a genuine discipline. In many Japanese schools, students engage in Hansei at the end of the day as a structured group reflection. When something goes wrong, the question is never only how to fix it. It is also what can be understood from it. This is not the same as dwelling. Hansei has a direction. It moves toward clarity and then toward action. You sit with the experience long enough to understand it, and then you use what you have learned. After a slip, ask yourself a few honest questions. What triggered it? What was I feeling in the hour before? Was I tired, lonely, overwhelmed, bored? Was there a gap in my structure that I have been ignoring? What one small thing could I do differently tomorrow? These are not punishing questions. They are navigational. Hansei is how you turn a setback into information, and information is more valuable than perfection. Chapter 6. Ikigai, the reason to rise. You can use every technique in this video. You can practice Kaizen and carry Zanshin, and build Fudoshin, and honor Shuhari, and reflect with Hansei every single evening. And it will still be enormously difficult if you are only running away from something, because humans are not built primarily for avoidance. We are built for pursuit. We move toward things. We need a direction that means something. That is where Ikigai arrives, and it changes the entire shape of the problem. Ikigai is one of the most widely discussed concepts from Japanese philosophy in recent years. The word translates roughly as reason for being, or the reason to get up in the morning. It describes the intersection of what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be sustained by. But at its most personal and immediate level, it is simply the thing that makes you feel that your life is pointing somewhere real. The bad habit you are breaking is almost always filling a gap. It is sedating something, numbing something, offering a quick and hollow version of something you actually need at depth. If you only remove it without replacing the deeper need, the gap remains, and something will fill it. Something usually will. Ikigai asks you to look honestly at what the habit has been doing for you, not to justify it, but to understand it. Because underneath most bad habits is a legitimate human need for rest, for connection, for meaning, for relief, for a sense of reward after effort. These needs are not weaknesses. They are the architecture of being human. When you find your Ikigai, or even just a fragment of it, a direction that genuinely calls you, something shifts. The bad habit loses its grip, not because you have fought it into submission, but because you have found something more compelling than it. You are no longer white-knuckling your way through withdrawal. You are walking towards something, and that changes everything. Viktor Frankl, writing from one of the most extreme conditions a human being can face, observed that those who had a why could endure almost any how. Ikigai is your why. Find it, protect it, let it pull you forward on the days when the habit speaks loudest. You outgrow it by becoming someone who no longer needs it. So here is where we return to the beginning. You began today with a habit that costs you something. Maybe it has cost you for years, and now you have 6 principles from Japanese philosophy that change the way you approach it. Kaizen reminds you that the smallest movement forward is still movement, that 1% is real, that no change is too small to matter. Zanshin asks you to stay awake, to watch for the trigger before it arrives, to carry the awareness that notices the pattern before the pattern has already won. Fudoshin gives you the immovable mind, the ability to feel the craving, the discomfort, the urge, without obeying it, the mountain that lets the storm pass. Shuhari keeps you honest about the stages. You cannot skip to mastery. You build the structure first, then you understand it, then it becomes you. Honor the sequence, Hansei turns every slip into a teacher, not into evidence of failure, into information. You reflect, you learn, you adjust, and you move forward with more clarity than before. And Ikigai gives you a direction worth moving toward. The reason that makes the sacrifice make sense. The thing that makes tomorrow worth getting up for. 6 principles. 6 quiet shifts in the way you see yourself and your habits. The core teaching of everything we have covered today is this. You do not break a bad habit by fighting who you were. You outgrow it by becoming someone who no longer needs it. If this video meant something to you, please subscribe. There is much more where this came from, and the channel is growing because of people like you who stay until the end. And I want to ask you one question. Leave your answer in the comments below. Which of these 6 principles speaks most directly to where you are right now, and why? Thank you for watching. See you next time. And as always, remember to stay in tune with your own mind frequency.